Hello everyone, it is Marc Sabatella from Mastering MuseScore here, and welcome to the Music Masterclass. This is my weekly series on Thursdays where we talk about some aspect of creating music, whether it's composing, arranging, improvisation, and so forth. And so what we'll be working on today is the project that we're working on in the Musicianship Skills Workshop, which has to do with transcribing the music for a song and eventually producing an actual sheet music arrangement of it. So we're going to look at what's involved in getting from a recording to an actual sheet music arrangement. And by sheet music arrangement, I mean like piano, vocal, guitar. This is kind of a pop song type style, kind of a Christian rock thing, and a song by my brother Michael, or Mike. So that's what we're going to be looking at. And I know several people have posted their renditions of the melody, so we're going to look at some of your attempts at this melody, and we'll look at what people got similar. I don't even want to talk right and wrong necessarily. We're going to talk like which is maybe the way we want to go. If one person heard the melody a little differently than another, how we're going to resolve. Because realistically, in really any sort of performer-focused music as opposed to composer-focused music, and by this I can include things like Baroque concerti, I can include an operatic aria, I can include all sorts of music that's sort of performer-focused. They're going to take liberties with the melody, meaning that every time they do that melody, it might be slightly different. And what we're aiming for is to find kind of the center of that melody is the way I like to word it. So what I'm going to do is, those of you who are, gold members, you've already heard the project, you've already been listening. Some people here haven't heard it yet. So I'm going to play just the beginning of the piece here, because that's what we're going to focus on right now. And we'll talk about this. So let me get this going here. That's probably a decent volume level, but we'll find out.
Rise up and shine, rise up and shine, rise up and shine, shine, shine. On you the light of the Lord will shine, shine. Your heart will sing and your eyes will see the wealth of nations brought to thee. From north to south and from east to west, the Lord's almighty hand will surely bless. Rise up and shine, rise up and shine, rise up and shine, shine, shine. On you the light of the Lord will shine, shine.
All right. So that is the basis of the song. We heard an introduction, and then we heard the chorus first, and that actually came up in the discussion. So let's be clear about that. Many songs in this type of genre, and by this type of genre, I'm just going to like broadly speak about popular music in general. We often expect to hear a verse first before we hear the chorus. But actually, in certain types of songs, we will typically hear the chorus first, and this is one of those. So, and the way we know it's the chorus is because then we heard the exact same melody with the exact same lyrics come again later. That's kind of the defining feature of a chorus. So this piece started right off after a guitar introduction with the chorus. So what I want to do is we're going to look at that melody. And before we actually look at the melodies, I want to, first I mentioned it's an F. So, if you had any doubt about what key it's in, you'd want to like verify that by checking against a keyboard or something. to check out what key you're in, and then maybe play yourself an F scale, maybe sing it through do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. I don't know why I'm singing in that octave, because Michael can sing in that octave and I can't really. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. So I can sing it there, the scale. And knowing that it's in the key of F, we're going to expect most of the notes in that melody to come from that key. Now, it turns out there's one note that isn't, right? So we're going to find that note. And so what I'm going to do next is flip over to some of the people who have versions of the piece here. And we're going to start looking at the different versions of the melody just to do a quick comparison. So one thing that Rod had mentioned, and we've already figured this out, but it bears repeating for anyone else. Rod was listening to it and heard it in the key of F sharp. And that's where he was hearing it. And it turns out because he was running it through, he was typing notes into MuseScore, and MuseScore was playing it what sounded like a half step off. And this can happen. If you ever notice that happening on your computer, where MuseScore, or not just MuseScore, actually, other audio programs can have this also, where it seems like it's a half step off from where you expect it to be, then most of the time, that will be due to different digital sample rates. So like your audio device built into your computer, that the thing that drives the speakers, has a choice of sample rates for the digital audio, and there's a lot of choices available. The two most common are 48 kilohertz and 44.1. And if there's anything funny going on in your system where the devices aren't talking to the operating system, or the operating system's not talking to the system libraries, or the libraries aren't talking to MuseScore or some other program, and there's confusion about which sample rate is going on, that's exactly what you'll hear. Everything being off by a half step and correspondingly too fast or too slow. I actually have that issue on my system. I have a digital mixer that I have plugged into my computer, and depending on how I run things, I can get that problem with all audio on my system, and I have to make sure I have everything set so that the sample rates match up. So speaking of sample rates, I want to do that right now, because I think I maybe need to do this. So I have on Linux, I have a little program that just a little script that I can use to set my sample rate to 44.1 hertz, or 44.1 kilohertz. And song's a whole step too high at Walmart. Now that I couldn't answer. It's possible. Here's another possibility. What if they deliberately speed things up when you're shopping to get you more excited and buy more? You know, maybe they're actually like taking the audio and speeding it up on purpose. On the other hand, I would sort of think they want you to spend time, and the more time you spend, and so they might want to slow it down. Anyhow, just speculation. All right, so we're going to look. So that's why Rod turned out to have things off by a half step from where he expected. So now let's look at his F melody here and talk about this. So what he has is 1, 2, 3. Rise up and shine. Rise up and shine. So that is how he notated that melody. Now we're going to look at a different rendition of that same melody. Now, by the way, I'm going to play the melody again so we can have it in our heads. My recommendation for you when you are trying to transcribe something is to do as much of it as possible in your head. In other words, yeah, it's all fine to have fancy software apps that can loop music and slow it down and so forth. That's all well and good, but I really want to work on developing the ear to the point where we only need to do that sometimes. And this isn't one of those times. I want us to be able to get this, and it's actually easier to get rhythms when they're at their normal tempo, or at least close to the normal tempo. So let's hear this melody again for the chorus and get it into your head. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3.
Rise up and shine. Rise up and shine. Rise up and shine, shine, shine. On you the light of the Lord will shine, shine.
Okay, so I've heard this enough that I know that melody pretty well. I haven't worked out all the little subtle details of the timing, but I know the words. It's rise up and shine, blah, 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 rise up and shine. On you, the light of the Lord will shine, shine is the final bit. So I'm going to sing this along, and I would like you to try to do that as well. If it's your first time hearing it, then, you will have to rely on having a good memory. If you've heard this a bunch, just go ahead and sing along with this. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3.
Rise up and shine. Rise up and shine. Rise up and shine, shine, shine. On you the light of the Lord will shine, shine.
Okay? So that is essentially the melody. And the thing also that I'm going to observe is the chorus, as I mentioned, happens several times throughout the piece with the same lyric, same melody. But if you listen to him sing the melody, as I said, in any sort of performer-focused music as opposed to composer-focused music, and the distinction I would make is if you're playing the second violin part in a Mozart symphony, no, you don't take liberties with the rhythms. But if you're the soloist, you do. And I don't mean completely rewriting the rhythm, but I mean shifting notes a little ahead of the beat, a little behind the beat. This has been a part of the performance tradition since the Renaissance, and it is not going away. And it's probably more the case in modern pop and jazz, but it's been a part of the classical tradition forever for soloists to take, just little small rhythmic liberties. So what's going to happen is every time you listen to that chorus, if you listen to the first chorus versus that second chorus that happened over here, in fact, I'm going to sing along with it here. Here we go.
Rise up and shine. Rise up and shine. Rise up and shine, shine, shine. On you the light of the Lord will shine, shine.
Okay, so if we compared those two choruses, because that's the second chorus, and then there's two or three more choruses later, we'll find subtle little differences in the timing of the notes and occasionally in the actual notes being sung. And so I have likened this, when I describe this process, I used to transcribe pop songs for a living. I mean, I worked on the Real Book project from Hal Leonard, which was a jazz fake book, but then they did a real rock book and a real blues book and a couple of other volumes in that series where we were transcribing pop songs, and you'd have to listen to three different versions of the chorus of a song and figure out how you wanted to notate it. Rather than notate every single little liberty that the singer took with it, you want to figure out what I call the center of it. And the analogy I make is, imagine someone aiming for a particular bullseye on the wall with darts, and you throw darts at that bullseye, and you never totally hit exactly that bullseye, but then later on, if someone comes back and looks at the wall with all the darts in it, you can kind of figure, well, this is what they must have been aiming for, based on where the cluster of darts are around that bullseye. So that's part of what we're going to do here is, as you listen to multiple different versions of a melody, figure out, well, where was the bullseye? It's not like with darts where you're aiming for it and miss. This is a deliberate missing. This is taking liberties. So anyhow, now let's flip back to Rod's version of the melody. Rise up. So the very first thing that I'm going to wonder about is that note on that A on beat 1, or is it enough late that that's a significant event in itself? Let's listen to just that much, and then we'll start comparing to other ones. So I don't have an answer to that question, but let's listen again to the coming in. 1, 2. three.
Rise up.
You see my hand come down for the, and in fact, this time I'm going to snap so that you can really hear. 1, 2, 3.
Rise up.
I hit that 1, and then up came a little bit later. So if we wanted to notate that completely accurately, we would say 1, 2, 3, rise up, or something like that. 1, 2, 3, rise up, or something like that. But then the question is that worth notating, that level of detail? Or do we say the bullseye was just 4 and 1? So Rod chose to call that 4 and 1, and for simplicity and readability, which is what I said to aim for, I think that's probably the best choice. But I'm kind of curious to see if anyone else aimed a little more for actually capturing that level of detail here. So here's Gijs's version. Oh wow, he's got the guitar intro here. So he also has, let's make this a little bit bigger. He also has rise up and shine. Okay, so now before I go further, I'm going to address Colleen's question. Yeah, when I transcribe melodies, I would never, well, I shouldn't say never. I would rarely do it into MuseScore first. Do I have manuscript paper handy? Important enough, let me grab some. Hold on, give me one moment. All right, I'm not going to waste a lot of time looking for my manuscript paper because I can't find it. Here's my manuscript paper. The way I typically do this, and some of you have seen this before, is something like that. If you can see what I'm holding up, let me see how visible. If I'm going to check. That is how I transcribe. I put in dots for the note heads, no stems, no specific indication of the rhythm, but I space things. If we look at this, we can see an F, an F, G, A, and then I left some space, and then I put in the next two notes. So that's, I kind of do that while I'm transcribing, then I work out the rhythms. And I went through, lots of examples of that sort of thing in previous sessions. So you can look some of those up. But so yeah, it's very possible that I wouldn't have had it into MuseScore yet until I kind of did all of that. But then, if we want to share it, we could either just scan, take a picture of it and post the picture, or enter what you have into MuseScore once you've worked out those rhythms. All right, so rise up and shine. So here's another interesting question. Is it really a dotted half note? Is it really a 3 beats note? Or is it rise up, rest, rest, and shine, rest, rest? There's another subtle difference in how things go, where we want to decide, is he cutting the note a little bit short? And also notice that Rod actually has it as a dotted half tied to an eighth. And then the and here is just an eighth note. So he has a dotted half tied to an eighth. Rise up, 2, 3, 4, and shine. So that's what he has there, whereas Gijs has rise up and shine. So he's rounded it off a little bit more. So in this idea of trying to figure out how we want to represent this melody, and I said go for simplicity and readability, there are limits to how much of the syncopation I'm willing to remove from the music in doing that. In other words, I don't want to round everything off to just quarter notes. So this is a judgment call to make, and I don't have the answer. I have the question. So Steinhardt, same for what you're saying. You think all the choruses started with an offbeat pickup, so as opposed to four and. So you're not hearing it as 1, 2, 3, 4 and 1, but you're hearing it as 1, 2, 3, 4 and, or something. You're hearing it coming in on the and of 4 or something. I don't know. I feel like that makes it a little bit harder to comprehend what's going on. So there's a place where I might sacrifice accuracy for the sake of readability. But I don't know. Again, I don't have the answer. I have the question. So I want us to ask ourselves that question. Think about the two ways you might notate it, the slightly more accurate way or the slightly more readable way. Hopefully they're not any different by more than an eighth note or more than a 16th note, even one way or the other, if you're rounding to the nearest eighth. And then you get to sort of make that call. For me, this looks a little simple. When I see 4 and 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4 and 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. That's a little simpler than what Mike sang, but it has the advantage of being really easy to read. And so then also there's the question of the melismas. Rise up and shine. So it's rise up and shine, rise up and shine. There's definitely a melisma that happens there that Heiss has kind of removed from this for simplicity. And Rod had it in his version, and he has his melisma notated as a B natural. And I think the next one, if I look at someone else's here, Graham has a version, rise up, and he has the rests marked there. So that's a half note followed by a rest. I like that. Rise up and shine. So he also has the and on the and shine. Oh, maybe Steiner, you're asking about that. Maybe that's what you were asking is these pickups as opposed to those pickups. Maybe it was these pickups here being on the and. Yeah, I think so. But then he has, so I think I would go for it that way too, but I'd have to listen to it some more. Rise up and shine. So he has, Graham has the melisma notated, and he has it notated with a B flat instead of a B natural. Now, the reality is there's some portamento going in there. There's some sliding of pitch that happens in this type of music where you allow the pitch to be imprecise. But also, check this out. This pickup here, the and shine, this note, and we're going to listen to that note again. This note, I don't know what it is. This is the musical equivalent of what we call a schwa in grammar. It's a sound, or in I don't know, speech. I don't even know what the word is for it. But in phonetics, I guess. A schwa is a sound that is like a vowel that is not enunciated enough to even register what the vowel is. It's a little sound that happens in ordinary speech. I went to this. I went to the store. Did I say I went to the store? Did I really get that ooh sound out? No. I said I went to the store, really. You didn't hear a clear vowel. That's actually something that I wonder if it's not more of a thing in English than it is in other languages. I feel other languages are more precise about their vowels and less likely to schwa them. I don't know if that's a verb, but any noun can be verbed, as I have learned. So anyhow, this schwa here on the and, Graham has notated as a B flat, but both Heiss and Rod had indicated it as a G. Where did we go here? Right, yeah, he's got the whole thing here. Rise up and shine. So he has G, C, as opposed to B flat, C. And Rod also had B flat, B, C. So let's listen to this and see if we think it's clear enough to make a definitive call about that. Oh, here I am going to take advantage of the fact that in YouTube, we can actually slow this sucker down. And I'm going to put it down to half speed. And move it a little ahead here.
Rise up
Whoops, a little too far.
and shine.
Yeah, that's that you just heard.
Rise up and shine.
Shine. So there's barely a pitch to it. So schwa is the term for the sound, the vocal sound made, but it also kind of applies. It's a ghost note is the word we would use in talking about the pitch. It's a ghost note. It's a note that is done with not enough air to make a solid sound, which is the musical equivalent of the schwa in phonetics. And it's very common both in vocal music and in wind instruments. Like in wind instruments, you might play, and this digital piano is either going to play that C or it's not. It's either going to play the C or not play the C. But on a wind instrument, you can do this thing where your fingers play the C, but there's not enough air to vibrate the horn. And you hear a sound with a little ghost effect of the C, but you don't hear it. I don't know why I'm playing that. It might as well have just, I could have just used the actual pitches. You can totally do that type of effect, and it's called a ghost note. And we had indicated ghost note with an X note head if we thought it was significant that it's a ghost note. I would rather not do that. I'd rather make a call on a pitch. To me, and I think you're right, Colleen, that was a little too slow. It just distorts, because the more you slow it down, the more it distorts. And some programs are better than that at others. The YouTube player isn't the best at it. So, let's hear this again.
Rise up and shine. Rise up and shine.
Shine. I think that's what I'm hearing is the and is a B flat, and shine is also a B flat. I think if there's a little pitch sliding going on in there, I'm not even going to worry about that. I think calling it and shine is probably the most accurate way of doing that. So then again, though, we face this question of, do we aim for accuracy or do we aim for some sort of logic here? This G makes way too much sense. I mean, not too much in a bad sense. Rise up and shine, rise up and shine. That's logical, right? Rise up and comes back down to the F, F, G, A, F, B flat, G, A, B flat, G, C. That repetition of the pickup into the next pickup makes a lot of logical sense. So if I were notating this might be a place where I choose to say, you know what, even though he's saying it this way, he was non-committal about the pitch enough that I might choose to notate it as a G, even though I don't hear it. I don't hear the G. But there's where I would totally run into one of the other choruses to see.
Here's
the second chorus.
Shine, rise up and shine.
Again, it doesn't really feel like it goes down. Let's find another chorus, because there's several of them in here.
Rise up and shine.
That was the clearest one. I really heard and shine. Listen to that again.
Shine, rise up and shine.
And shine. That's really what I hear. So, and Elizabeth brings up a great point. Sometimes we hear what we want to hear. We hear what we think it should be rather than what's actually there. Sometimes that's not a bad thing. If you are doing this, what we are doing here. Yeah, I agree, Graham. I don't think the G is ever there. There might be one chorus. If you listen to all the choruses, and if someone listened to all the choruses and said, oh yeah, on the fourth one there's a G, I will believe you. But I also totally accept that there's probably no G in there anyhow. And yet my brain expects one, and I would at least consider it. I would consider notating it that way, because again, we're not aiming for an accurate transcription. as much as finding that bullseye. We're looking for what is like the center of this melody. And maybe the G makes more sense. And see you, Colleen. Have fun at your next class. So I don't know. So when when I was working on that real book project, I would be transcribing things like this, and then I would make a lot of decisions myself. If there was one place where I was having difficulty making the call, or a few places, I would write down a note to myself, and then I would discuss it with my editor. A guy named Jeff Arnold was the head editor for the project. And so for every song, I would have like a list of 3 or 4 questions for him. Well, some of them maybe didn't have any questions, but a lot of them I would say, so yeah, 4 measures into the chorus there's this one note I can't decide to whether to call it an eighth note or a quarter note, or whether I should call it a B flat or a G or whatever. And then I would get him to weigh in on those. Now, in this case, there's not a Jeff Arnold to ask. It's Mike, right? So when it's done, I'm going to ask him. But here's the thing. So Graham, I don't necessarily agree that just because he's saying a B flat, that he absolutely wanted the B flat. This schwa sound, or ghost note sound, is it's not one that we're conscious of. And so even if he did it consistently, when presented with this exact same discussion, he might look at it and go, you know what? I think I would like it notated as a G. Maybe not. I'm not saying he would. It's very possible he'll go for the B flat, but I'm not going to take it for granted. So this is one of those places where I would want to check in with him. And this is the distinction we want to make between accurate transcription and logical readable sheet music. And so our goal here for this project is less about the accurate transcription and more about the logical readable sheet music. And making some of these calls, well, even though it didn't quite go this way, we're going to notate it this way because it seems more like it's going to make sense in the context of the sheet music. There will be valid places for that. Again, not saying this is absolutely one of them, but I remain unconvinced on this particular point. So yeah, he sings a B flat. There's logical reason to call it G, and this is one that we will want to get if we'll get Mike's actual opinion on this. So you've got your version on here, Steiner, so we're going to take a look at this. Oh, you've got it all nicely arranged for the guitar and drums here. So, okay, so this is really good. So this is what, so Graham, no, we're not rewriting the song. It was never written, right? So, yeah, so Allison, absolutely. If this project doesn't work for you, then just come back when we have something you're interested in. So that's fine. So the point is, this was never written; it was only sung, and so you have to understand that when things are sung, they are sung with personal inflection that can vary from the written music if there was written music, but there was never written music. So we're not rewriting it. We are notating it for the first time, and we're notating the way we think it would make the most sense as sheet music for someone else to sing. He doesn't need the sheet music for himself. He needs it to present to others to sing. And so therefore, he needs it to be readable, clear, logical, and to be notated in a way that shows them kind of a certain basis of the melody. And then if they feel like ghosting some of those notes, they can. If they feel like changing the rhythms, they can. So again, the goal isn't a 100% accurate transcription. It's to put together a framework that then captures something. Okay, and Elizabeth, you're mentioning about the similar function. So what happens, so I'm going to play this with chords. Rise up and shine, rise up and, right, so it's a G minor chord that's happening there. We'll do chords next week. they're both in that 2 chord there. So they either one of them works in that sense, and that's part of what's going on here. But I do agree. Well, the way Steiner has this notated here, 1, 2, 3, rise up, right? He has 4 and 4 and 1 and. So he has the up notated on the and of 1, which is absolutely accurate. Absolutely accurate. That's one of those places where, again, I would have to make that decision. Absolutely, it's accurate. The up is almost entirely always half a beat late. And a lot of the things are half a beat late or half a beat early, anticipated or delayed. That's a hallmark of really all popular music styles since 1900 or so, is this idea of offsetting notes by half a beat early or half a beat late. And then the question is it significant enough to notate it, or do we notate it the way everyone else did, 1 and, or 4 and 1, and let the singer take their own liberties with it? And again, I don't have the answer. I have the question. They're both valid. And here is another situation where I'd listen to every single version, and if he is absolutely 100% consistent about always doing the up every single time half a beat late, and I feel like it doesn't make it too hard to read, then yes, absolutely, we will notate it this way. So, yeah, this is the more accurate version of the rhythm. The next question that would come up, and shine, rise up and shine. So I think that this and shine here, the way you have that is maybe a little too, because I'd have to listen to the recording again, but I feel like shine, the end of shine happens long after the bar line, not on the and of 4 as you have it there. But let's go ahead and check that out again and see.
Shine, rise up and shine.
Yeah, it was just after. It was only barely after the 1, because everything else is a little earlier, like you have it. But that one, I think, was notated a little too early in that version, that this shine, the C, doesn't come until like the and of 1 or so. So the next question is, rise up. I think I had heard it originally as a B flat instead of an A. Rise up versus rise up. And maybe I just didn't put enough listening into it.
Rise up.
Rise up. Yeah, I hear the A. I think I agree with that. Does everyone else have the A is the question. Or did some people have B flat like I initially imagined? Rise up. Graham's got the A. Gijs, rise up, has the A. And Rod stops there. So Rod, I know you have it, more of it done than that somewhere, but I'm not seeing it here. So yeah, I feel like the A is good. I think this is another one where I didn't think that hard about it, because I didn't really try to do this hard. I just listened to it a bunch of times and, sort of figured some things out along the way, but I didn't actually go through the exercise of writing it out or anything. So yeah, I think you all are right about that A. And so that little passage there, actually, let me flip over to Steiner's version. Rise up and shine, 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 right? That passage, that C sharp there, is the only non-diatonic note in that entire melody. Is there another one buried in a verse or a chorus? I mean, a verse or a bridge somewhere? Maybe, I don't know, but that's the only one I remember hearing. So yeah, that C sharp there is a non-diatonic note. And when we go into looking at the chords next week, we'll see exactly why that's there, if you haven't figured it out already. And so shine. Here's the next question. That rhythm, shine. It's definitely something like that. Dotted quarter, eighth tied to quarter, quarter. That's absolutely basic, the basic rhythmic. I'm wondering if anyone heard that as a triplet. shine. I can't even accurately do the triplet because my brain wants to turn it into that. But, oh, I see that Gijs has turned it into half and 2/4. Shine, shine. So I feel like that's probably rounding a bit too much, because there's definitely a sense in which that D comes in ahead of the beat. And where's Graham's version? Here we go. So you also have the half and 2/4. I feel like the dotted quarter, it's basically 2/4 and a quarter, but you don't notate it that way, right? You notate it as a quarter and then an eighth tied to a quarter and then a quarter. Shine, bum, 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 bum. 1 and 2 and 4, 1. That is how I would notate that. Even if on careful listening it turned out it was really triplets, or one of these notes was a 16th away from where it is enough different from just half and 2/4 that I feel it needs to be needs to be represented in the notation. And that's a common enough rhythm as written that when you see that, people would know how to interpret it.
It's up and shine, shine.
Right?
It's up and shine, shine.
And I'll try it one more time.
And
1, 2, and
shine.
that last one is right on 4. So absolutely, it's dotted quarter, quarter, basically. Mike often plays a 3-3-2-8 note pattern. Oh, so you're talking rhythmically, right? That is absolutely a good point, because I was going to mention this when we try to turn that. So what's happening here is what we're hearing accompaniment wise. So we're going to look ahead now and talk about what else we got to do here. We are listening to electric guitar, bass, and drums. We're going to arrange this for piano. And so the things that we're hearing in the accompaniment are not exactly what we're going to notate, but we're going to have to figure out how to capture it and kind of re-represent it. So like what's happening here, I mean, you can see it's a strum pattern. It's a very simple strum pattern that's, as you said, it's sort of 3-3-2-8, which let's talk about what that really means. Let's keep it at this tempo.
Shine, rise up and shine, shine, shine.
Right? That dunk, 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 dunk. And yes, that pattern, 3-3-2, tresillo, is the term that's used, and it's a underlying part of the Afro-Cuban clave and things. Bum, bum, bum. Part of tango and all sorts of other Afro-Cuban rhythms, African rhythms, and so forth. So yes, that rhythm is super common in a lot of music of different cultures that have all influenced American pop music. So what we're going to hear is that he's strumming, ting 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 ting. He's strumming every eighth note, but then he is either playing certain ones louder than the others, or he has a second guitar, which I think is actually the case, that he's only strumming those. I'm not actually sure. Did anyone pay attention enough to tell me that?
Shine, rise up and shine.
Yeah, definitely. I'm looking at his fret hand to see if he's muting the strings, if he's strumming differently to make that pattern happen, because you can do that with just one guitar, but no, this is layered guitars, clearly. So we're looking at him playing straight eighth note, ding 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 ding, but on another track he has recorded jong 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 jong. So that pattern kind of is pretty pervasive. And he actually recorded a piano part in MIDI, and this is what generated this. He was going to try to, or what started this project, he was going to take that MIDI file, import it into MuseScore, and hope to get some sheet music out of it. And as anyone who has ever tried that knows, no, it doesn't, you're not going to get readable sheet music at all. So, so we're going to try to notate, not necessarily exactly what he played, because he said it was just a quick attempt at it. It wasn't necessarily intended that he use exactly that part, but it also has a similar pattern of this 3-3-2. So Steinar has indeed put in those accents, and we can see them written in here. 1, 2, 3, bum 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 bum. Right, so that pattern continues throughout. So that is an excellent observation, that once you understand something about the underlying rhythm in the accompaniment, this gives you some insight into how you might want to notate the melody. Now, it doesn't mean that we're going to, like, if we totally took that at face value, then we wouldn't have allowed up to be on the end of 1. Rise up. We wouldn't have allowed that A to be on the and of 1, because that would kind of conflict with that accent on 1. And we wouldn't have, there's just certain choices that we wouldn't have necessarily done. But certainly on places like shine, shine, right? That is really nicely synced up with that rhythm. So yeah, you still, just because you know a rhythm that you want to sync up with doesn't mean you force everything to sync up with it. But if there's a place where you have doubt and you think that syncing up with that underlying rhythm helps, then it will absolutely be a good thing. So these are all good things that are coming up here. So I've mostly focused on the chorus here because, the things that come up in the chorus are are going to come up in the verse also. And in fact, in pretty much no matter what song we're doing, you face the same kinds of issues over and over again. So what I'm wondering from people that have tried the exercise here, several of you are here, what came up during the verse that you maybe wondered about? Was there anything in particular that I want to look at your, so you also have the rests in here. I like those rests. I feel like those rise up, the fact that there's some space, or rise up, and right, there's a space between up and shine. I feel like if you can notate those spaces without making it too cluttered, it's worth doing. Now, here's another thing. You have and shine. You have a dot. You have an eighth note tied across the bar line to a dotted quarter. And I had mentioned earlier that last C, I think, actually doesn't show up until after the bar line anyhow. But in any case, this dotted quarter on beat 1 followed by an eighth rest, I'm gonna just make a flat out rule. We're never going to do that. We are never going to notate a dotted quarter note followed by an eighth rest. We're either going to round that note length to either 1 beat or 2 beat. We're not going to try to finesse the lengths of the notes to that extent. The only time we would ever have a dotted quarter followed by a rest is if that dotted quarter isn't on the beat, right? If that dotted quarter had come in on the and of 1 and then an eighth rest on beat 3, yeah, that would be a thing. But here, that dotted quarter and the eighth are combining to make the first half of that measure. Accurate or not, we are not going to notate it that way. The notation of durations of notes is the easiest way to simplify things without compromising anything, right? I mean, if we choose to take that A of rise up and put it on the beat versus a little bit later, we're making a noticeable change. But if we take a note that lasted 1.5 beats and round it up to 2, that's barely going to be noticed at all. It's an insignificant change in this kind of music because people breathe when they're going to breathe. This is another one of those, we're aiming for the center here, not an accurate exactly how long was that note. So anyhow, that's my little soapbox about that. We'll definitely want to round that up, round note durations, so that we never have. I don't know how I would write the rule, but note durations will be rounded to full beats unless they are actually, or the note endings will be on full beats unless there's an actual note after, or something like that. I don't know how I'd write the rule, but when I see it, I'll know that no, that's not what I want. So the question again is, what came up, if anything, during the verses that were particularly interesting? I'll tell you something that's particularly interesting to me, and that is how much more interesting the chorus is than the verse, inherently musically, which is again really typical. I mentioned that in the community when I was kind of talking about the differentiation between chorus and verse. Chorus is going to be the part where you repeat the melody with the same lyrics. Verse will be places where you repeat the melody with different lyrics, but also the verses are typically less interesting. They're less interesting melodically, either because they're made of fewer notes or they sort of meander to fit in more syllables, or something rhythmically about them just isn't as powerful and engaging. And that's to make, I mean, it's sort of a deliberate thing to make the chorus be this memorable thing that you send people home singing in afterwards. Like already, we can all sing this song, right? But I barely know the verse, partially because we only heard it once. Let's hear it.
Eyes will see.
Whoops.
Well, your eyes
Back up.
shine.
Here we go.
Your heart will sing and your eyes will see. The wealth of nations brought to thee. From north to south and from east to west, the Lord's almighty hand will surely bless.
Yeah, so if the song has a story to it, the verse is the story, the chorus is the moral of the story, the quick summary, right? That's a good way of summarizing how this would go. So east to west, east to west, and that's that same rhythmic pattern there that we heard before. So one thing that I'm going to be curious about here, and as we start notating it, next week again, I want to focus on the chords. And then the week after, we'll focus on constructing a reasonable accompaniment. But part of what is going on here is we want to understand the rhythmic content of this. And we've been talking about that 3-3-2 rhythm, dun, 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 dun. But notice the verse has a different pattern entirely.
The wealth of nations brought to thee. From north to south and from east to west, the Lord's almighty.
Right, that's a sort of a different rhythmic pattern, and we can actually see it there.
And from east to west, the Lord's almighty.
We can see his hand strumming out this different rhythmic pattern. So as we work out the accompaniment there, that's something, again, that idea of strumming a guitar is a very natural thing to do, but we don't strum pianos. We don't typically write write piano parts like that, other than in particular songs where that really is the thing. But typically piano parts are just not done by repeating a single chord over and over again, because it's just not idiomatic for piano the way it is for guitar. So we'll want to understand that rhythm there. And so now I will want to look at Steiner's version and see what you wrote in, if you wrote in anything interesting accents. Ding, da da dum, dum, ba da bum, bum, ba da ba. So yeah, this rhythm here, it's similar, but it's definitely different, right? And I'm because it definitely has that hit on one and of two, but it's a different character, because this one was dum 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 dum, and this has got, I don't know, it's a gentler sound, it's a smoother sound, it's a less in your face representation of that rhythm. So even though it's got a lot of the same notes, the way it is expressed is different. And so that's an interesting thing in itself. So that sounds about right. And then you've actually notated the harmonies here. One thing to know, yeah, so I'd have to actually check on the rhythms there because I think they might be slightly different than that, but it's related. These harmonies here, it's possible Mike overdubbed himself recording those harmonies, but it's also possible he has a couple of different devices like this. I don't even remember what brand it is, but there's some processor, of effects processor, that will automatically harmonize his voice. He demoed it for me, a number of years ago, and it's pretty amazingly sophisticated in that it can, in real time, listen to a guitar track and then use that to sort out the harmony, sort out what the chords are, and then while he's singing, produce appropriate harmonizations that go with the guitar track. It's really quite amazing to me that this technology exists and can be applied in real time like that. It's a lot of signal processing, but so it's entirely possible that those harmonies were computer generated. But it sounds like it did a good job of fitting the chords, right? I didn't notice places where it wasn't fitting the chord, and I think it's customizable so that if you get off of if it generates a bad harmony, you can probably tell it somehow. No, fix that.
And from
Here we go.
east to west, the Lord's almighty hand will surely bless.
Yeah, I just don't know if that's purely his voice singing that, or if it was generated by the harmonizer. Because the harmonizer uses your own voice, I think. I don't even know how it works. I won't claim to know how it works. So anyhow, this all looks basically like I expect it to look. And again, you've got it notated in such a way that you've got a lot of the rhythms very specifically written out. Graham's version of this. We'll see. So that measure right there, we'll see, doesn't remind me rhythmically of exactly what he's saying. This is another of these places where you've rounded something off that maybe is the right rounding, because to make it actually like, where's we'll see? Eyes will see. So this to me is perfectly readable. And if this is more accurate, and the trick is verse 1 different enough from verse 2? Because typically that's another thing you'll find, is that the verses of a song might have essentially the same rhythm, but there might be enough difference to it because maybe there's a different number of syllables because the lyrics are different. There might be a different number of syllables from one lyric to the next, and so there might be an extra notes that he has to squeeze in singing. Absolutely a thing in pop music that you will expect that to happen. So but this rhythm is a very typical type of rhythm in here, and it does remind me of what I heard.
Almighty from me, wealth of nations brought to thee. Your eyes will see, your heart will sing, and your eyes will see.
Yeah, I feel like I will see feels more or less like what I'm hearing there. Eyes will see. I think that's a good way of representing it. Again, is it 100% exactly accurate? Is there some note that's slightly delayed or not from there? Maybe, maybe not, but that's rounding to an eighth note. It's got the right degree of syncopation. It's believable. So I would go with that over the more rounded off version of eyes will see. If you're always seeing a note on one every single time, that's probably too much rounding. So this is going to be a judgment call. How often are we going to round these things off, and how often are we going to preserve them? These are all judgment calls we're going to get to make, because I see you've made plenty of other places where you notated that one. So yeah, these are all things to work out and figure out. So I want people to keep plowing away on this. If you haven't already, done your version, go ahead and do so. And what we'll do next week is start talking more about the chords. If you feel like getting a head start on that, by all means, but I'll talk more about that going into next week. So with that said, we are going to wrap things up here and hear something different. Here we go. So thanks everyone for being here. Thanks for the discussion. Thanks for all the stuff that you've submitted, and some nice work in figuring out these melodies and so forth. So yeah, next week we'll just keep working on this. We'll get the chords and rhythms and stuff sorted out a little bit more in preparation for actually creating sheet music for this. And yeah, by the end we should have a nice little bit of piano, vocal, guitar, sheet music to turn in as a result. So hope everyone enjoyed the session and enjoyed yesterday's MuseScore Cafe on MuseScore 4.1. So I will see you all next week or whenever I see you. Bye, everyone.